We are through 3 weeks of college football, and that means that we are bringing you our week four top 25. There's been a lot of changes since last week, and we're really trying to re-rank the teams at the beginning of each week. It takes us a couple days generally to do because we really have to hash it out and figure out what the teams look like, and it's not easy to do early on. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at number 25. That's going to be the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, this is a lot lower then you'll see them in the AP poll as well as a lot of other polls. But I just haven't really been that impressed with Indiana so far, and they haven't played anybody yet. It's enough to keep them ranked, but they have slowly been dropping for us. Great opportunity against Illinois this week, though, if they want to move up. 24 is California. This team we have been a little bit more impressed by. Their young freshman starting quarterback, who I cannot pronounce the name of, has looked very solid so far, and they got in our mind, pretty solid win against Minnesota by 13 points. That was enough to move them up to number 24 in our poll. And then Missouri, they have a win over Kansas, and overall, they've looked solid enough that I do think that they deserve to be ranked at this point, which is where they come in at 23.
And they play South Carolina at home this weekend too, so that will be a big game for them. And if they can get the win, even though South Carolina did just lose to Vandy pretty badly, South Carolina is still a good team, so that's going to be a good win on their resume. And number 22, our Group of Five representative, and that is Tulane. Jake Retzlaff has looked very good as the Green Wave starting quarterback, and they got a huge win over Duke last week. The Darian Mensah revenge game fell short for the Blue Devils and Darian Mensah, and Tulane looks like the front runners for that Group of Five representation in the college football playoffs. And then at 21, we do have Vandy. Vandy's been very impressive this season. We were pretty high on them going into this year, but we thought that it was going to be all for naught and that the schedule was going to be too difficult for them to actually succeed. But this team has solid wins over Virginia Tech on the road and South Carolina on the road. This is going to be a really scary team to play later on in the season. We could easily see this Vandy team getting to that 8-9 win mark if everything goes right.
Number 20, yes, they are still ranked. It's Notre Dame. I understand that you have to win games, but at this point, eye test is still very much a factor, and they have lost to two top 10 teams by a combined score of 4 points. So they're behind a lot of the teams that have been able to win over a at least a Power Four opponent, but they are still ranked in our poll at number 20, and I do believe that they are a top 25 team. Number 19 is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Good win over Wisconsin, took care of business. The Badgers really are not very good this year, but Alabama did exactly what they needed to do and won the game by multiple scores. They dropped out of our poll initially, but have come back in these last 2 weeks and do still look like a top 25 team.
Ole Miss comes in at number 18, and they won a shootout of a game against Arkansas. This Razorbacks team looks fairly decent. So that's a good win for the Rebels. The biggest difference for Ole Miss is that they now have backup quarterback Trinidad Chambliss as their starting quarterback. Austin Simmons did not get out to a hot start to the season, and he looks very good, at least in the one game we saw. We'll see what happens this coming week against Tulane, but Ole Miss was a team we weren't initially very high on, but now we're starting to see that Ole Miss is looking like a pretty solid team. At number 17, we have Tennessee. And this is going to be a little weird considering that we have actually moved them up 2 spots from where they were last week, but they arguably should have won that game against Georgia. Kirby Smart even saying that they should have and deserved to win that game. But Joey Aguilar has really turn this offense into one of the most explosive in the country. And even though the defense didn't really stop Georgia, that is a pretty hard thing to do. Tennessee really looks like a very solid team, and I would be surprised if this isn't a team in contention for an SEC title as we get through the rest of the season. And then coming in at number 16, we have Iowa State. Still 4-0, but was a little bit closer than we would have liked to see against Arkansas State last week. But hey, you're 4-0. You're still going to get rewarded for that, and they come in at number 16.
Number 15 is going to be Auburn. They still have that solid win over a Baylor team that's not quite ranked for us, but we have been considering bringing them back into the top 25. Baylor's got a good opportunity this week, but we'll get into that in our predictions video. Auburn this week is playing one of our top 10 teams in Oklahoma, so great opportunity for the Tigers to potentially move up into the top 10. Utah at number 14. This also has looked like a very solid team. I'm impressed with Devin Dampier so far. The Utes are going to be at home against Texas Tech this week. Another great matchup of top 15 teams for us. And then number 13, Georgia Tech. Great win over Clemson. It took a last minute field goal, but they won the game. That's all that matters. We had them ranked before, unlike the AP poll, and we are moving them up because we are still very high on this Georgia Tech team, just like we were in the preseason. I think the Yellow Jackets look very, very solid so far.
And number 12, like Jonah just mentioned, it's going to be Texas Tech, and they face off against Utah this week. A really interesting matchup between these Big 12 teams, and could be a preview of what the conference championship could end up being. But Texas Tech has just handled business as of late. Really took care of Oregon State last week, winning 45-14. Haven't really played anyone very good. We thought Oregon State would be a bit of a test for them earlier on, but Oregon State has not been that good of a team. But I'm really excited to see how this game shakes out. This will be the first real test for Texas Tech to see if they are a legitimate team like we think they are. And then at number 11, it will be Texas A&M after that last second win against Notre Dame. Marcel Reed has looked very good in year two as an Aggie. I'm really excited to see how Texas A&M fares in SEC play, considering that has been their downfall the last few years. And if they can get a couple big wins in SEC play, then Texas A&M might have a case to make the college football playoffs for the first time in their program's history.
Number 10 is Florida State. They did not play this past weekend, still really just riding the coattails of that opening week win against Alabama. Beat them by 14. That looks like a top 10 team to us as of right now, and we almost put them ahead of our number 9 team, but couldn't quite do it in Texas. Really been disappointed with the Longhorns so far. They just haven't looked like a great team by any means, struggling against inferior competition such as UTEP, where they only won by 17 points. And then obviously they do have that one loss to Ohio State. Overall, I do still think that Texas is going to figure things out, but if they don't start doing it quickly, then you could see them potentially drop out of our top 10. This game against Sam Houston, they absolutely better blow them out of the water this week. Otherwise, Texas might not be a top 10 team next week.
Number 8, it's going to be Oklahoma. Like Jonah mentioned earlier on, big matchup against Auburn, the Jackson Arnold revenge game here. But John Mateer has looked like the best quarterback in all of college football as of late. The dual threat ability is great. He was instrumental in their win over Michigan a couple weeks ago, and they took care of business against Temple last week on the road too. Oklahoma, even though their schedule is arguably the toughest in all of college football, this is a team that is built to withstand all that comes their way. They are more than deserving of that number 8 spot in our poll. And number 7, Illinois, a team that has kind of surprised us. Like we thought they were going to be pretty good, but after that convincing win over Duke and just continuing to have great games against their inferior opponents, unlike some other teams in our top 10, Illinois finds themselves on the cusp of entering our top 5 and a really interesting matchup against Indiana on the road to get a signature win, a ranked win here to boost their resume. Illinois is going to be a very tough team to play against. And then at number 6 is going to be Oregon. The offense is incredible. Dante Moore, who had so many questions going into the season, looks very comfortable in this Ducks offense. They got a rivalry game against Oregon State coming up this week, who they should be able to take care of, but not as convincing of a win as we would have liked to see against Northwestern, considering that Northwestern is not very good, only winning by 20, but you still took care of business against a Power 4 opponent. So they come in at number 6.
Number 5 is Penn State. They finally scored a decent amount of points this week. Still haven't played anybody, so we cannot put them ahead of any of these teams in the top 4 who all have very solid quality wins. Number 4, Georgia. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Arguably shouldn't have won the game against Tennessee, but they're 3-0, and it is a very good quality win. The Bulldogs haven't looked the best during the season, but they have one of the best wins in the country as of right now, which is why they are up at number 4, but not quite able to pass our top three. Now, at number 3 is LSU. We had them as our number 2 team last week. They did drop one spot, not necessarily because they looked bad, but because their signature win was Clemson, and the Tigers lost to another team already, falling to 1-2. It was Georgia Tech, another team in our top 15, but still, it takes a little bit of luster off of LSU's resume to this point in the year. And they could have arguably played a little bit better against Florida. The defense looked good, but Florida's offense hasn't been that great so far this year. I think it'll be very telling how Miami performs against Florida this next week and could maybe end up flipping those teams back around.
And like Jonah was just mentioning, I think the biggest thing for LSU dropping just one spot is this LSU defense forced 5 turnovers against DJ Lagway. They picked him off 5 times, and they only won this game 20-10. They easily should have put up a lot more points, and maybe that's a tribute to the Florida defense, but I am looking for a lot more from this LSU offense in the last couple weeks. So that's why we're going to actually have Miami as our number 2 team, as they really took care of business against a high-flying South Florida team, beating them 49-12 at home. The Bulls, coming off of that win against Florida at the Swamp, had all the makings of getting another upset win over a top team, but Carson Beck has been playing more like we are used to seeing him a couple years ago at Georgia when Georgia was in the national title consideration. And that is a great sign for the Hurricanes, not to mention this defense has been lights out as of late. Miami is more than deserving of this number 2 spot. And at number 1, holding for another week, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Had a little bit of a scare against Ohio this past week. It was a lot closer at halftime than a lot were expecting, but they started to heat up towards the end of the game and won pretty convincingly. And I think Ohio is still a pretty good team, one of the best teams in the MAC. So I don't think it's necessarily that bad that it was a little bit of a struggle. But I did expect the Buckeyes to hang a couple more points on them than I was expecting. And if you want to look at it too, Ohio has scored the most points against this Ohio State defense all season, and that includes Texas. But overall, everything that we would have liked to see out of Ohio State, they're going to hold firm as our number 1 team in our poll. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we'll see you in our next video.